Hello and welcome to another stirring edition of the How to Survive podcast. It's episode 44 and I'm joined as ever by Chris Morris. Hello Chris.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well.
Good to hear. This week's movie, Rude Boy, Hush. Don't ask me why I'm in a rush. Don't ask me why I'm not tweeting. I'm in Brent Cross shopping in Lush. So the movie's Hush.
Okay.
That was JME.
It was. He popped in just to spit some bars.
Yeah, some deep bars.
Yeah.
In his black top.
Sure.
You're a Jamie fan?
Oh, don't know me, mate.
I suppose we'll tune into the Chris Morris Grime Hour.
Yeah. Tune in.
Mm.
It's on Rinse FM from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. every Thursday night.
So the movie is Hush, 2016. So really, really recent.
Mm-hmm.
It's on Netflix. So if you haven't seen it, please go and seek it out. It's a really good film. And of course, we're about to delve into the plot in depth, so it will be filled with spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few twists that you won't see coming.
Yeah,
so,
and it's only 80 minutes long, so it's a good, quick watch.
Exactly. You could probably, whatever you're doing right now, just flip open whatever device you're listening to us on, find Netflix, watch it, and you won't lose any time out of your day. It's so short. So let's jump in there, Chris. We want to talk about the film. We want to know all about what happens and the key parts of it before we talk about how to survive. Because an educated survivor is a happy survivor.
Mm-hmm.
So let's jump into the plot. Hush is the story of Maddie, a young woman who has been left deaf and mute by a case of bacterial meningitis when she was 13 years old. She's now a young woman making a living writing books in solitude deep in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
The only people she really sees day to day are her neighbours, Sarah and her husband John, who are learning sign language to enforce that friendship. She also keeps in contact with her sister Max by using FaceTime and talking through sign language. So one evening Maddie's cooking dinner and Sarah comes for a visit. But their visit is cut short when Maddie's food, which has been left unattended, begins to smoke and sets off her fire alarm. The fire alarm is a very powerful shrieking alarm, which has to be loud enough that she can feel the vibrations. She's profoundly deaf, so can't hear a single thing. She can only feel things. So Sarah heads home, and Maddie sets to work on her novel, see what she can get done. But then she gets a phone call from an ex-boyfriend, so she slams the laptop shut, runs over and starts busying herself by cleaning up the detritus from her burned mill. Unbeknownst to Maddie, Sarah returns to the house, bleeding profusely, and she's pounding on the window shouting, "Help me, help me, help me." But of course Maddie is profoundly deaf and can't hear her. So Sarah is brutally murdered, repeatedly stabbed in the stomach by a masked man. He then drags the body away into the woods. Maddie receives a FaceTime from her sister, who confesses that she fears for Maddie's safety being out there alone. And in the meantime, the masked murderer enters Maddie's home and steals her phone. After hanging up the call, Maddie returns to work, but begins to receive photos of herself taken in real time on her phone. She goes to see where the photos are coming from, and comes face to face with the killer who stood on her porch. She writes on the window that she hasn't seen his face and that her boyfriend will be home shortly. But of course, the killer heard her sister tell her earlier that "I'm worried for you being alone in the woods." And the killer says, knowing that she can read his lips, "I can come in any time I want, and I can get you any time I want. But I'm not going to, not until it's time. When you wish you're dead, that's when I'll come in." So, a terrifying omen.
Ominous.
Maddie locks all the doors and windows and runs upstairs with a knife and hammer. She hides in her bedroom, but soon sees a shadowy figure tapping the window. She goes over to investigate and finds that the killer is holding up Sarah's body and using her limp hand to tap the window, which is a very creepy scene. Terrified, she runs downstairs, dropping the hammer in the bedroom. She remembers that Sarah had a phone on her earlier and attempts to distract the killer by setting off a car alarm. She does so, and he runs around to investigate. She leans through the window to check the pockets of her dead friend, but she's too slow. The killer runs over and tries to get into the house, so she grabs the hammer and drives it through his forearm. As he's making a tourniquet for himself to stem the bleeding, she retreats back in the house, locking all the doors and windows. She attempts to escape several times, at one point hiding under the house, which is a raised sort of wooden stilt house, I guess.
Yeah, like an American... Yeah.
It's a log cabin in the woods, yeah. She realises that there's not many places she can go, so she goes back inside. She climbs out of an upstairs window eventually and throws her torch into the woods, luring the killer to the woods, but as she's climbing down, he shoots her in the leg with a crossbow. He fires a second shot, but Maddie drops to her back to avoid it. But he thinks it was a kill shot, and as he climbs up to confirm the kill, he throws the crossbow onto the roof and she kicks him down, stealing the crossbow. She runs back in the house and locks herself in, and then she goes into the toilet and sanitizes the wound with some sort of alcohol, and then makes a tourniquet. But it becomes clear that she's going to need help soon because she's about to bleed to death. As she's considering what to do next, John, the boyfriend of Sarah, comes around, clearly returned home from work. And as he's calling out Sarah's name, the killer makes his way around and pretends to be a policeman. It says that he's investigating a crime that has been called in. It becomes clear that the man isn't a policeman because he's obviously not a policeman.
Yeah, he's obviously the killer that we've seen already.
I mean,
it becomes obvious to John.
Yes, he's got a tattoo basically on his head.
Yeah,
and he's bleeding and
not in uniform.
Exactly.
And
a very shifty looking man. So as John prepares to stove this man's head in with a rock, Maddie appears and pounds the window. John looks up and is promptly stabbed in the throat by the man. They have a brief fight, and John gets the upper hand, holding the man in a chokehold, at which point Maddie escapes the back door. But the killer breaks free and runs after her. He drags her to the ground and begins beating her head in with a breeze block, and as she lies dead, she turns to the camera and starts speaking. So it was all a dream. That was her daydream. As a writer, Maddie is constantly thinking of alternative endings to her books, and that's a skill she carries over to reality as well.
Writer's brain.
Yes, that's what she calls it.
Yeah.
Well, there we are.
That's what she says her mother used to call it. Writer's brain.
So she's... What we see is probably more of a visual thing.
But she's imagining... It's a visual demonstration of her imagining different outcomes of different options that she could take. And
that carries over to a conversation between Maddie and other Maddies who have all got different ideas on what she can do. Some suggest hide upstairs, some suggest hide under the bed and stuff. But ultimately, she realises she'll die unless she kills the man. So out she goes. She shoots him in the chest with a crossbow, and then runs back in the house. But she falls over in the doorway and gets her arm caught. And he slams, it's a sliding door, he slams it on her wrist and then stamps on her hand until it's basically pulp. Which is a very disturbing scene.
It's pretty nasty.
Yes. She writes, "Do it, coward," on the window after he says he's about to come in. But as he's breaking in, she opens her laptop and writes a description of him, along with a note of love to her parents and the reassurance that she died fighting. When the man breaks in, she sprays him with insect killer in the eyes, and then she throws the deafening smoke alarm to disorient him. He manages to hold her down and choke her, and with her last bit of life, she grabs a corkscrew and drives it through his jugular, killing him. She grabs her phone from his pocket and calls for the emergency services, and that is how Hush ends. What did you think, Chris, of Hush?
I thought it was really rather good. It's sort of it's a high concept horror film, isn't it? It's got one central conceit, which is that it's the classic home invasion, slasher, stalkery sort of horror movie. But the protagonist is deaf. And many high concept movies, the problem with their concept is that it doesn't quite stretch out into a whole movie. They don't always carry it off for the length of the film. It's not always that interesting for the length of the film.
Do you have any examples of that?
Well, like an example of one that we've covered would be Speed. They don't spend the whole of Speed on the bus because that would become interminable. But and especially with horror movies, like if there is a, Julia's Eyes last week is a good example because spoilers if you've yet to see Julia's Eyes. Well, it's a slight spoiler. She spends different parts of the film in various states of sightedness. So
the whole movie isn't her just stumbling around a house looking for the killer.
Exactly. So but I think that this film handles it very well, and it's almost like it's real time as well. It's like it's a couple of hours in these people's lives.
It does feel like quite a long time's passed though. I think the action gets started very quickly, and although it does maintain it by having a lot of like kind of set pieces, I guess. It does drag when it is dragging. It is dragging, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
I'm not saying that the whole film dragged. I'm saying there were parts where I was like, I can't get to the point. Like I thought when she got her head caved in the sort of dream sequence, I thought that was the end of the film.
Yeah.
And then I was like, that's good time to end it. But then it carried on. I thought that was a good cold ending, but
yeah. I think it wore its quite limited running time pretty well, because it's about 80 minutes and then 5 minutes for credits or whatever. So 75 minutes, an hour and a quarter, and so many films nowadays are too long. Blockbusters and things, they all run to 2.5 hours and all that sort of thing. It's really refreshing to see such a well-paced, I thought, film.
Yeah, living within its limits, I guess.
Yeah, the director also directed Oculus, which came out a few years ago, which I haven't seen, but I've heard sort of mixed things about, because it's I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's like a haunted mirror film, and like the film takes place across sort of like 2 or 3 different time periods. There's a lot of different characters. It's quite special effects heavy. There's various tricks here and there. So maybe the fact that was such a special effect heavy and complicated film, this is almost feels like a response to that. Because it's so pared down, and it is just it's literally 4 characters in the whole film.
Yeah. You said the same thing about Coherence as well a few weeks ago. The director of that had previously worked on Pirates of the Caribbean, things like that. So so maybe it's a trend, like people to have like these little pet projects.
Yeah, I think because Kate Siegel and Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan's the director, and Kate Siegel plays Maddie. They are married. They were in a relationship when they conceived the idea for this film.
Yes.
And then obviously have since married.
Right.
And yeah, I think it does feel like a sort of. I mean, they basically came up with the idea for the film over dinner, and it feels very much like a dinner. Thing, you can imagine them talking about, I swear there was someone else in there. I thought I heard someone in the house, and then like you could go, imagine if there was someone in the house, but you couldn't hear it, and all that sort of, and that's what a high concept film is. It's like it's
what if,
and like a very short pitch, which tells you everything that you need to know about the film. And it doesn't. I don't think it tries to be anything that it's not. It's very, sensible. I think it doesn't have any outlandish. He's not part of like a death cult, or not like possessed by someone or anything like that. It's just there is a man who
is trying to kill you.
And you're in the house on your own, and you're deaf, and how are you going to survive? It's perfect How to Survive fodder.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Do you now want to buy an iPhone?
You text me during this. I don't want to buy an iPhone because clearly they're no help at all.
Yeah. My God, it was interminable. That was like, so her iPhone comes out. Yeah. He's like, I'll drop in like sort of all the sounds that we hear during the film right now. Right? And that gives you an idea of what they're putting up with. And this is a deaf person, so she can't hear it anyway.
Yeah.
Surely she should have it on vibrate and not like playing out all the.
Well, maybe she doesn't realise that they're on.
Or maybe,
yeah. Maybe. She could be like walking around her house and there's like pounding drum and bass going on. Yeah, she's just completely unaware. Yeah.
But it was. You can see how they got funding for the film. If nothing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Overall, it was a pretty gripping film. I think very well made.
What did you think about the writer's brain concept?
Well, it's just basically saying you have lots of ideas, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean,
like when you've written things before, I guess.
I have, yeah, but so my feeling with it was that basically it sort of makes sense because, I imagine that writers, professional writers, novelists do have that sort of part of their brain.
Internal discussion.
Yeah,
says,
exactly.
Okay, well, if we go down this route and have, I don't know, Ned Stark become king of Westeros, then what will happen? Oh no, it won't work. Okay, well, we'll kill him off there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like, Yeah, so I think it makes sense in that respect because she's a writer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically the only reason for her to be a writer in the whole film. There's no other justification other than maybe, she'd have had to be something incredibly successful to own a really nice house like that in the middle of the woods.
Yes.
But I felt like it became a bit sort of trite and underused. Because outside of that sort of single scene where she imagines all the different escape possibilities, like hiding or running away or, whatever, they don't really touch on it at all. And I think I almost would have preferred it to have not been related to her writing at all and just be a feature of her deafness that she hears like an internal voice. And in the film, she says it's the voice of her mother. That she recognises it as the voice of her mother.
So you're saying the only reason she is a writer is so they could basically have that.
It feels a bit like that. I mean, there's no relation. He's not there because he doesn't like the end. It's not like Misery.
No,
or whatever.
Although it is a bit like Misery because I think this is the first one-on-one horror we've had since Misery. I was thinking about this earlier.
Really,
I can't think of any others. I mean, Loved Ones was a group setting. It was one against two, but this is, I think, the first one-on-one.
They're quite rare, aren't they? Like it's normally against a force or a group or whatever. But yeah, I think the problem that I have with it is that it's confined to pretty much that one scene.
Yeah,
and it is, I think, a gimmick that they employ to shock because
a bit Deus Ex writer's brain.
Well, it's sort of just like let's make the audience think that she's dead for 10 seconds. Do you know what I mean? Like
it worked though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it is cheap as well, isn't it? Like the way they employ it is cheap, and the way it's presented is almost like a sort of weird superpower. Yeah, but only for like the 30 seconds that she's imagining.
So would you rather have had it from the start? She was like cooking dinner and she's like, maybe I should have chicken. No, have steak. No,
well, I don't know.
You'll burn it. Oh no, the rice is on. Oh,
yeah. I think it just suddenly because obviously in the initial scene she's talking to Sarah, her neighbour, and she says, I've got this, she's like, how do you think up these ideas, like where do you get your ideas? And she's like, I just have this thing in my brain, like my mum calls it writer's brain, and I just imagine all the different endings for things.
Well, that's what any writer would do, sure.
Yeah, I know. Like that's what a lot of people do. But I think it when it returns in the film, in that scene where she imagines all the different things that could happen, it feels sort of unearned. Like it's like, oh, remember this? Like, remember that thing that there was like a throwaway discussion about? Like,
well, there were a few things that seemed a bit ominous when she said them that never came to fruition. Like, at one point, the neighbour texts her and says something like, oh, what are you doing? She's like, I'm cooking dinner. And she's like, oh, I've made a big mess of it. And she texts and says, I can't see any flames. And she texts back, not yet. And I was like, well, so the house is going to burn down.
I didn't catch that. But yeah, maybe that was a red herring that you fell for. But yeah, I it's a clever conceit. I just think that they didn't employ it enough throughout the film.
But then I wonder whether you can do that too much. If
it was every scene, she's seeing multiple different, because then it would be like a superpower, wouldn't it? But I think, maybe it's not so much the idea; it's just how it was presented.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. Maybe it's just Maybe that's just a visual aid to describe basically her thought processes.
Yeah, it's difficult to show internal.
Or is it because she's hemorrhaging massive amounts of blood? Is it a hallucination?
Well, I mean, I think the fact that it's established prior to that means that, because also, like, if a character wasn't a writer and they didn't have this writer's brain thing, and then that scene played out as it was, I don't think you would feel any differently about it.
No.
You wouldn't be watching it going, well, why is she thinking like this? No one ever imagines possible consequences of situations. Like, I don't know. But, it's a minor... it's not even an issue thing, really. It's just, it didn't affect my enjoyment of the film. It was just a...
Yeah, I mean, like,
strange...
it's a bit like Serious Man. That has several dream sequences where it's like a shock when it comes back to reality, and you're like, that... It feels like that in the same way of like, oh, right, it was a dream. Yeah. That's funny. But because it's only once, it's a bit like, well, yeah. Like,
in that, though, that's played for... Because you're talking about A Serious Man, the Coen Brothers film. And, the main character has various dreams at points, and they're never really... some of them are more surreal than others, but they all of those dream sequences tell you something about the character and what he's thinking internally and all that sort of thing. and it, you know, is played for comedy value. Whereas with this, it's I think it's almost like they started with, wouldn't it be great if we made the audience think that we just killed off the main character and then worked backwards from there. Like, it feels, like I said, it feels unearned.
Yeah.
It feels like you're not building up to it. It's just, oh, and now she's dead. Oh, no, she's not, sort of thing.
Yeah. So maybe when we remake it in a few years, the How to Survive Productions, we'll choose to make her entirely writer-brainy.
Yeah.
Or
and it'll be
not at all.
8 hours long.
Yeah.
She agonises over every decision.
So maybe we should talk about some of these really important parts of the film.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, I think, is when Sarah, the neighbour, is murdered and Maddie is completely oblivious because she is deaf. Obviously, this is our introduction to the killer, our antagonist, and it's pretty unpleasant, isn't it?
It's very nasty, yeah. It's a very... there's something... It feels like something very personal about the like... I don't like using this word in this context, but it's a very intimate way of murdering someone.
Yes. I mean, Jason Voorhees kills people with a knife, but it's like he just slash them, or it's a slasher film.
Yeah.
And they could have done that and made it all a bit cartoony, but because what happens in this is she's like clawing at the window for help, and then he turns around and just really slowly just stabs her a bunch of times in the stomach.
Like 10 or more.
More.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, she's basically dead on her feet, and he just carries on doing it.
And she's like, it's almost like they're embracing. There's something weirdly personal about it. Yeah, I mean, like, the deafness conceit of the film, like, convinces immediately, I think, because of this scene. When the neighbour comes around and, you know, her helplessness completely translates, and it's pretty horrifying. You know, you're watching, you know, desperate for her to turn around or hear, when obviously she can't. But it does, you know, outline, I think, just how closed off she is.
Yeah.
But
do you think, and I have no idea, I don't know many deaf people, any. Would you be a little more vigilant visually, do you think?
Possibly, but
I'm not saying you'll be in a constant state of like.
I don't know though. Like, I mean, you can walk around, you know, your house and not notice like really obvious things that have changed. Yeah. So I think if you were in your own house and you're in your own mind, as much as she is, because she's got writer's mind.
Yeah. She's probably like, should I put this in the bin?
Yeah.
No.
What if I put this pan in the dishwasher? Oh. That'll mean that non-stick comes off, potentially. Maybe I should hand wash it. Yeah. But what if I hand wash it? That means I could cut myself on the... Like, yeah.
Everything she imagines ends in her death.
Yeah. I think there's an old Batman graphic novel set in Arkham Asylum where Two-Face, the Batman villain, he flips a coin to make all of his decisions. Yeah. And a psychiatrist tries to wean him off that by showing him how arbitrary it is, by replacing his coin with a 20-sided die.
Yeah. No, I've read this.
Yeah, but he can't. It means he can't make any decisions at all. Like, I wonder if this is the same. Like, she would end up the same way.
Because this is the start of what is actually a mental illness.
Yeah, she is. This is a Two-Face origin story. Yeah. Hush, also the name of another Batman villain.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So maybe it is connected.
Maybe.
My question is, we said it's a bit similar to Jason Voorhees, and this question applies to Jason as well. Why bother with the mask? Because this killer wears a mask. Jason Voorhees wears a mask. Why?
Who knows why Jason Voorhees does anything?
Right.
In this, you know, I think he takes off the mask because he's challenged to, basically, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's basically saying it doesn't matter if you see my face because you're going to die.
Yeah. I mean, like, how would you characterise the killer in this? Because he comes across as, like, a sadist because he's, you know, the way in which he kills people is very sadistic.
Yes.
But also, like, he is a coward. Like, she's right when she calls him a coward towards the end of the film. He is cowardly. And you can tell, you know, by his reaction to John when he comes around. John is very, like, big and muscular, like a jock guy, and he says himself, you know, the killer says to John, you know, there's no way that I was going to beat you in a fight.
I gave myself 2 out of 10 chance of beating you.
Yeah. and like maybe he's got writer's brain as well.
Yeah.
Odds brain, fractions brain.
Fractions brain.
But yeah, he is like a coward. He's a weak little man, isn't he?
Yeah, when he has a crossbow.
Yeah. And I think that probably plays into why he wears a mask. It's because he's scared, and the only reason he takes it off is because he realizes that Maddie is deaf, and he thinks he's got her trapped, basically.
But I mean, if he's a psychopath,
Mm-hmm.
and it'd be good to have a psychologist on hand here, because
Yeah.
I don't know nearly enough about what I'm talking about. But my assumption would be he wouldn't care if people see his face, because it's like he's just killing people because he's mental.
Yeah, I mean,
He doesn't have a sense of right.
but
and
it
wrong.
depends. If he's a sadist, he's out to make them suffer as much as possible.
Yeah.
And by taking off his mask, he's making her understand that he's not going to let her go.
Right.
Because she's saying, I haven't seen your face, therefore you can just leave, and no one will be able to find you because I haven't seen your face. And so he takes off his mask and to make her understand that he's not going to leave.
Right. It's quite unpleasant, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's nasty. He's a nasty guy.
Yeah. He's called the Man.
Mm.
Played, by the way, by John Gallagher Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
who you may remember from another film we've covered called Back Country, where he played the grizzly bear.
No, he's from 10 Cloverfield Lane, obviously.
He was Emmett.
Yes. Unrecognisable.
Yeah. It was the only one I was doing the research. You know all the in-depth research we do.
Yeah.
Looking up the actor's name.
Mm-hmm. IMDb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when she's consistently trying to leave the house throughout the film.
Yeah.
And one of the things that comes across is that she can't hear him.
Mm-hmm.
So she has to rely on actually like having him visual confirmation of where he is at all times.
Mm-hmm.
But he can hear her, but she doesn't know what he can hear.
Yeah.
So she could be creeping around and just stamping on twigs and not even realise.
Yeah.
And that makes it doubly hard to escape.
Exactly. Yeah. Like there's the scene where she throws the torch as far as she can, and then he's going to climb down the trellis and escape, basically. But it becomes clear that she's making a lot more noise than she realises, I think, because he immediately finds her and shoots her with a crossbow.
Yep.
And I think that, I mean, that makes sense, right? Like that's a good, a nicely potted little scene.
Yes. It's a good rule as well. I mean, we like rules when it comes to horror films, and don't make any noise at all.
Yeah.
Because you can't gamble.
But how can you judge that if you're deaf? Because she presumably hasn't heard noise for like 25 years or however old she is. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, you could if she only had her phone, there must be some sort of like decibel meter.
Yeah, and that's what she should use it for if she's got her phone. Get an app, like download the app, because presumably she wouldn't already have it. Download a decibel meter, and then like make sure she stays. And if she crosses that line, then it needs to have a really loud alarm to let her know that she.
By the way, if anyone's listening, we should make it clear that he took her phone away.
Yes.
Yeah. At the beginning of the film, and he also slashed her car's tires. So she does have a car, but she can't use it.
I like horror films that deal with like moment to moment challenges of trying to survive.
Yeah.
Because everything is like, oh, use your phone. No, he's taking it. Oh, do it on iMessage, on the iMessage app on your laptop. No, he's cut the power.
Yeah.
Escaping your car. No, he's slashed the tires. Like all these little challenges, and then it's things like, now there's a scene where she's got to dress the wound on her leg. Now there's a scene where she's got to load the crossbow. Like it's just little incremental scenes of her trying to survive, like, and the different, like, facets of her trying to survive.
It's a struggle, isn't it?
Yeah, but I really like that. I think it's structured in a really satisfying way.
Yeah,
and she like basically tests various potential escape routes
that you would think of doing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like it's something that really works well. And as I said earlier, it's like the foundation for this podcast is going, why didn't they try this? Like, But she tries all the sensible ideas.
Yes, she does.
Throughout the length of the film, and then resolves to just fight because she's got no other way of.
It's in the same way as Child's Play a few weeks ago. At the end of that, spoilers for Child's Play, the 1988 film. If you haven't seen it. They burn Chucky, which is what everyone in the whole world is like, just burn him.
Yeah.
And then he comes back after that.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, but I think that's really good.
The question we always ask when it comes to out in the woods horrors, would it help to just sprint into the woods as fast as you can?
Well, the answer is maybe.
Yeah.
It depends at what point in the film, because obviously that's off the table when she's wounded.
Yeah.
Like she just can't.
She can't run. Yeah.
Whether she would be able to do it, I mean, that is presumably
when she's first hiding under the house and she can see him walking around.
Yeah.
Just wait till he's on the other side of the building and then just sprint as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Because you know the area better than him, presumably.
Presumably, yeah. But then, yeah, no, I mean, it's a legitimate. I mean, you'd have to have big stones to do that, basically, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And he does have a ranged weapon, which sort of... I mean, like, you could wait until he's around the other side of the house, break line of sight, and then try and go between trees as much as possible.
Yeah. Or climb
but you can't hear him if he's chasing after you.
True, yeah. And if he fell asleep, start snorting at the end of it.
Yeah. And we don't know how isolated this is. It might be that
Maddie and John and
Sarah are the only... Yeah, her only neighbours are John and Sarah for
50 miles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Although the emergency services were fairly quick to respond, so.
Well, we don't know how long she was sat there, Joe. We can't assume.
Yeah, that is an assumption. So then, right at the end of the film, the part that I call the finale. So let's go from when she has her hallucination / visual aid to explain writer's brain. Would the cold ending have been better? Would you have been happy with that? So when she gets her basically bludgeoned with a breeze block.
I think it's a stupid idea though to run, isn't it? If that was the end of the film, we'd be like, why is she running into the woods? She's wounded. She can barely walk. Yeah. So I think that would have been an unsatisfying ending. Like, you could say, why, when John has wrestled the guy to the ground, doesn't she run out and just stab him repeatedly? Yeah, repeatedly.
That's a good point, because he's holding him down.
Yeah. But I mean, like, how much she can see from where she is or whatever, we don't know, you know. But she doesn't do that anyway. I liked the last portion of the film. Because after that she retreats back into the house, basically taunts him. Well, she shoots him with the crossbow. He responds by demolishing her hand, which is horrific.
And whenever she gets hurt, she can't scream.
Yeah,
because her vocal cords have essentially been destroyed by the bacterial infection. Yeah. So whenever she's in pain, she's just kind of grimacing and
punching the window, and like, because he is like. You have to see it, basically. Yeah. Like, imagine holding a load of matchsticks in your hands and then just like snapping them all. That's the sort of noise you can expect.
Oh.
Yeah.
I did write down, by the way, early on in the film, like right at the beginning, she's going to use that alarm.
Yes, it was Chekhov's alarm, definitely.
Yeah.
And the film sort of approaches the idea of her incapacitating the killer in a way that mirrors her own disability or a disadvantage. So by, you know, she basically sprays wasp repellent in his eyes, which blinds him, and then turns the alarm on. Yeah, and that deafens him to a certain extent, but it doesn't quite follow through with it. Like, you know, I think I would have preferred it if she had like fully, because he regains his sight more or less within sort of 30 seconds.
Which wouldn't have happened.
No, and also I think I would have preferred it if he was blind, and then she's got to deal with a enraged, like madly swinging,
like in Kill Bill 2.
Yeah, exactly. Like this sort of just wild
swinging around a knife or something.
Yeah, and then the tables would have properly been turned as well, because that's what we're waiting for, isn't it? In this film, we're waiting for the moment at which she's able to turn the tables. Yeah, and it doesn't quite follow through.
She never really does turn the tables. She gets a sucker punch in the end. Yeah, I say sucker punch. You know what I mean? It's a last gasp effort.
Yeah, I think what would have been better was if she had at the early point in the film. In our version of Hush, she's debating whether or not to throw away the ruined leg of lamb that she's burnt to a crisp. Yeah. And she doesn't throw away, and then later on she blinds him fully and deafens him, and then clubs him to death with the leg of lamb.
Yeah. So that's an alternative. So what? So all of the film that plays out is just her imagining what would happen if she hadn't burned
and then it zaps back to her making dinner, and she goes, Sarah, I think we should leave.
That would be good, yeah. Well, he. I'm going to speak up for the killer, the nameless killer. He could have just, when she shot him with the crossbow, if he'd gone, rather than, I mean, revenge is sweet, we know that, and he wants to, incur some wrath immediately. But if he just sort of sat, she'd bleed to death quite slowly or be unconscious.
But he clearly, he's not done making her suffer yet, is he? Because even after he crushes her hand, he shuts the doors and she locks it.
It's a logical fallacy, Chris, to throw good money after bad money, right?
Right.
And it's a sunk cost, isn't it?
Mm.
So if I was to give you an investment and say, I want £10,000 for this project we're working on, building a school, I don't know, and I said, we need another £15,000. You give me another £15,000, and it's not materialising. It looks like a waste of money. Do you keep spending money in the hope it's going to materialise? The answer is no. You shouldn't, but people do, because that's logical fallacy. Mm-hmm. Same thing happening here. He's invested in an entire evening of work, basically, into killing her. She's going to die anyway. Yeah. So he should just walk off.
Yeah, but then I guess so.
Do you know what I mean?
But he's not thinking about this from a business perspective. He's thinking about it from a I like murdering people perspective.
Yeah, bit of critical thinking though. Never hurt anyone, did it?
That's true. Certainly not Maddie.
No. So with all that said, Chris, if you were to find yourself deafened and muted by a bacterial infection and living alone in the woods, and you were approached by a murderous masked man, what would you do to survive?
Well, let's go back to the very start, the very origin of the problem.
Okay.
Ways to avoid contracting bacterial meningitis.
Okay.
I mean, children are now vaccinated against meningitis.
Yeah. Have you had yours?
I believe so. Yeah.
That's TB, mate. TB.
Oh, TB. No, we I think it's children who are 12 at the age of who were 12 in the year 2000 a certain year. Basically, now children are vaccinated.
From now, children will be vaccinated.
Yeah, well, yeah, from
today's children.
Yeah, today's children. Obviously, Maddie would not have fallen within that bracket.
No.
Hence, she got meningitis. But obviously, vaccination is a preventative measure, and that's going to stop this happening in the future.
And I imagine when that came through Parliament, that's exactly what they said.
Yeah. Have you seen Hush?
Yeah.
And then unanimous vote in favour.
Yeah. So the health secretary stood up and said, "Look, imagine you got meningitis, right, and you lost the use of your ears and vocal cords,
but you retained the ability to imagine scenarios to their logical endpoint.
What would you do?"
Yeah.
And then
a man came to murder you in your isolated wood house.
Yeah. And that got put through, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But cochlear implants can be placed in deaf people who have been deafened as a result of bacterial meningitis.
Really?
Yes, and it has been shown to help them regain their hearing.
Yeah.
And it would have resulted in her hearing her neighbour, Sarah, at the crucial moment. Whether or not that would have resulted in an easier time for her overall is another question. And also it has to be said that some in the deaf community don't necessarily consider their deafness as something to be cured.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And perhaps Maddie, who is presumably relatively wealthy as a result of her novel, is one such person, because you would assume that if that was something that she wanted to do, she would have the financial capability to pursue that.
Exactly. I mean, if she lived in Britain, she'd get it probably on the NHS.
Yeah. But even so, if you're wealthy enough, you could pay for it privately. And it would be wrong for us to assume that she is someone for whom that is an appealing idea. So, that would be a way of surviving.
So, cochlear implant.
Yeah, or that is a change to her life that could have happened. And as I said, this is looking further into the future. There's not going to be a Hush 2 because people have been vaccinated.
Well, thank goodness. Well, fair enough. Although, if I am, it's just my job to be the devil's advocate here. Maddie, at the beginning of the film, is unable, once the murders have begun, to get a cochlear implant.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So this is, but I take your point that this is preventing Hush 2.
Yeah, and this is more of a hypothetical.
Right.
Obviously, she can't see the fact that there's a murderer outside of her house and get a cochlear implant.
No,
but
not yet. Anyway, maybe in the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Technology is a wonderful thing. Similar though, if he's about sort of preparing for the worst case scenario. But this isn't even the worst case scenario. This is something that I'd expect most deaf people to have. She does have that obnoxious fire alarm. I say obnoxious, highly functional and useful, actually.
Yes.
But she doesn't seem to have a flashing doorbell, which is useful. When her phone goes off, it's set to flash so she can see it. And I know a lot of deaf people would have a flashing doorbell. So when the doorbell rings, you obviously can't hear it. So a light will flash. She doesn't have that. If she did...
Well, did her neighbour go to her front door, though? Or
no, she went to the patio, didn't she?
Yeah. So she'd have to have doorbells all round the house.
Well, that's the neighbour's stupid fault for not thinking, basically.
But she didn't have a doorbell, so the neighbour was right to go
we're now assuming she doesn't have a doorbell.
That's true, yeah.
She may have had the world's most flashy doorbell. A doorbell that when you ring it, it sprays napalm over the person standing immediately behind you. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, further to that, she could have had a burglar alarm or a security system. You can get silent burglar alarms or burglar alarms for deaf people.
Yes.
There's a company called Silent Alarms in the UK who do burglar alarms, fire alarms. They do things like baby monitor indicators, I guess. Yeah. Doorbells, phone call indicators, things like that.
Do you work for Silent Alarm?
Listen, I can get you a deal. If you enter the code HowToSurvive at the checkout. Don't do that.
Well, maybe try it, I don't know.
Well,
if you work for what they call
any of our deaf listeners can get a discount.
This isn't the best medium for deafness. I mean, there are scales of deafness, so maybe we do have deaf listeners because if they've got a cochlear implant, they could plug into it.
That's true.
But if there's anyone who's profoundly deaf and hasn't got a cochlear implant, and they're listening, I'd want to know how.
Okay.
I'm interested, and I'm not having a go. I'd like them to be listening or enjoying the podcast in some way. So, if anyone knows how deaf people consume audio media like podcasts, please get in touch. HowToSurviveShow@gmail.com.
Sure. But having such a security system or alarm installed, it might not have prevented the killer eventually attacking, but could have prevented him from stealing her phone in the first instance, which would have enabled her to contact the police.
Fair enough.
Because she would still have had her phone, because he wouldn't have been able to get into her house in the first place. Although, that said, she doesn't seem to be the most diligent when it comes to locking doors.
Exactly. I mean, like we said this before, lock the door.
Yeah. There are some basic how to survive rules, or suggestions, and it's things like locking doors.
Yeah.
It's things like never splitting up. It's things like running directly into the woods.
Yeah.
At full sprint.
Yeah. Always have. You live in America. Always have a gun.
Yeah.
Loaded.
always keep your phone on you.
Yeah, exactly. I've got one idea, and this is up for debate, I guess. So, my understanding was that if you were ever shot with an arrow, you don't pull it out because you'll basically then bleed out, and she pulls it straight out with gusto. And I looked into this, and I'm sure you're familiar with Cora. You can ask a question, experts respond. So the question was asked: if you're shot with an arrow, should you pull it out? And Abraham J. Leon, MD, came to the rescue.
Did you say urgent answer required?
Yep. I'm worried that
please help.
My Google searches for this were emergency blood loss procedure. What happens when you're shot with an arrow?
Help for the profoundly deaf.
So
sure.
Yeah, Google probably gonna be selling me all sorts of things now.
Yeah.
But Abraham J. Leon, MD, says, in general, when you are in a place where you can medical attention, that's what he says, leave the arrow alone, or the knife, or the ... It could not only be tamponading a bleeding source, but removal, aside from the issue of tamponade. Tamponade?
I think tapenade is an olive-based accoutrement.
Yeah, well, this is tamponade.
Okay.
may cause further and more significant damage. So I guess, particularly if it's an arrowhead with a barbed end, you'd do more damage coming out.
Tear. I mean, that's why they're designed that way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you are, say, in a place with no healthcare, like Maddie, all bets are off.
Okay.
And
so just fucking do whatever you like.
Well, he says, there, my friend, you will have to use your best judgment. And this best judgment would relate to the anatomic site of the injury.
Okay.
So an arrow deeply embedded into the chest is different than one on the thigh. The former, more dangerous than the latter.
Interesting that you picked the two locations of crossbow wounds that are featured in the film, chest and the thigh. Yeah.
But then I always understood that the thigh is a very sort of muscular... There's basically massive arteries going through your thighs.
Yeah, the femoral artery is the biggest, right?
Yeah, that's in the groin, I think.
Yes, yeah.
But she gets shot in the kind of the arse.
Yeah.
Which, if anyone's who's watched The Sopranos knows, I think Bobby gets paid to shoot someone in the arse.
Right.
Is that right?
I don't remember.
He's supposed to shoot this rapper, an up-and-coming rapper. Spoilers for Sopranos, like season 6 or something. Bobby's trying to like be the tough man, and he needs to shoot someone. So he finds a rapper who wants to get some street cred by being shot. And he says, it won't hurt, will it? He says, no, I'll shoot you in the fleshy part of the thigh. And he goes to shoot him, but he misses and shoots him in the arse. So then he's known as like the rapper who got shot in the arse.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Bit of an aside there. Bit of a comic relief for this very tense discussion about leg wounds.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Abraham J. Leon, MD, for your insight. Not that it was very helpful at all. But...
Yeah, friend of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, at a crucial juncture in the film, Maddie may have tried any one of the following, Joe. Right. And I'm gonna just gonna read them out, and you're gonna, I think, quickly guess where I'm going with this.
All right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. QWERTY. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Football. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Baseball. Now those are the top 10 most commonly used passwords.
Actually, password's the most common password.
Apparently not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the most commonly used password.
I don't believe it.
And so there's a moment where she tried...
What's your password, by the way?
What's your pen code? There's a moment in the film where she tries to access the Wi-Fi of her neighbour's house.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know the password.
Yeah.
Chances are it may have been one of those 10, because those are the 10 most frequently used passwords.
Yes, yeah.
So had she tried each of those, on her laptop, which is independent from the power source in the house, and which is shut off, obviously, because it's on a battery, and the power source is independent to the neighbour's house, obviously, then she may have been able to access the Wi-Fi and call for help.
Yeah.
There's a fair chance that John and Sarah wouldn't have changed their password, and if they had, then they probably would have changed it to one of those very poorly thought out choices.
Although it could be the manufacturer's one. Like mine's the manufacturer. No, mine's not the manufacturer's one. So there you go. Yeah. Is yours?
Possibly. I can't remember.
Yeah.
What's your pin code?
That's good. Yeah. I've got loads of passwords. I don't see. I don't think anyone would get all of mine. You probably get a couple. But...
Yeah.
You know me well. I don't think you'd probably.
It's probably Roman Reigns.
Yeah. Roman Reigns 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Roman loves Joe 1, 2, 3. I mean, people go for their pets and stuff, which I think is a bit obvious.
Yeah. So hers might have been bitch.
Bitch 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But we don't know what Sarah and John's pets are called. If they have any.
Who knows?
I've got them. I'll tell you one of my passwords, which I think is quite funny. Because I don't think anyone's. It's not that useful or anything. So you can make your iPhone into a hotspot.
Right.
If I ever need to log into that, the password's fuck off. So.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Witty.
Yeah. It's been that way since I was 18. So
Great.
That's sort of man I was at 18.
Yeah.
This one. This is a quick one. Just a throwaway one. We talked about this in Home Alone as well. Just basic siege tactics. Because presumably you've got food in the house.
Yeah.
He hasn't got food out there.
Yeah.
You've got a good view of him manoeuvring around.
Yeah.
He hasn't got a good view of you manoeuvring around if you pull all the curtains. Just sit tight and wait till morning.
You can't, though, because you'll bleed to death.
Yeah, but at the beginning of the film.
Okay.
Because he's not in the house.
Yeah, but he is able to get into the house very easily.
Yeah, but you've got a knife. He would either have to.
All right, so arm yourself with a knife and then hide.
Well, you've got the arm, you've got the knife, and you've got the hammer.
And the arm.
she's got arms.
She's got arms.
Yeah, a knife and a hammer.
Yeah,
she's armed.
Right.
And if he broke a window, just go towards that window, and the windows are either.
Yeah, but how would she know if he broke a window in the living room if she's hiding in the bathroom?
We'll sit on the stairs so you know. But if
she doesn't have 360-degree vision either.
No, but you can manoeuvre around the house. If you hear something upstairs, he's got to climb through
the
window.
What do you mean hear something upstairs? It's a film about a deaf woman.
I forgot she was deaf.
You forgot she was deaf. It's the premise of the film.
All right. So you just have to run around every window in a circuit. Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is just keep an eye on him.
What's your next one?
Well, hear me out. Because he's got if he has to break a window and you see him break a window, you know he's coming in. Just run at him and hit him in the head with a hammer.
Right.
Or stab him in the face.
Yeah.
Or his jugular.
None
of the windows are like full body. He can just walk through them. He's got to crawl through or like maneuver through.
Right.
Which will slow him down and make him vulnerable. And you can just go in.
Yeah. I mean, there are problems with it. I mean, one thing I did think was when he thinks that he's shot her with a crossbow in the head, basically, and she picks up the crossbow and he climbs up the trellis and is surprised by her at the top.
Yeah.
And she like sort of kicks him in the face. Why not like jam the crossbow?
Or just keep kicking him back down.
Yeah.
Because
forever.
You've got the high ground.
Yeah.
Anakin.
Which is, as we all know from Star Wars, it's crucial thing. Yeah.
So you happy with that one? Siege tactics?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly thought out. Yeah. So just listen out for any breaking windows.
Well, I've got one idea, which is for John.
Right.
You remember he's the neighbour who comes over.
Yeah. He's the other male character. He's not
the only other one. Yeah. The one with the name.
Yeah.
Yeah. He comes over and he's fooled for a few seconds by this man who says he's a policeman.
Yeah.
Now, if John was one of these sovereign citizen types, and the guy had been like, "Show me your ID," and he'd have been like, "Oh, do you have a warrant?"
Yeah.
I don't. I'm the entity known as John. Yeah. I'm not the person known as John.
Yeah, that's my personhood, but I don't. That doesn't represent me as an individual.
Yeah.
If anyone hasn't heard of sovereign citizens,
yeah.
I mean, that is a whole rabbit hole of discovery to venture down.
It's basically these American people. And there was some English.
Not exclusively.
I mean, the American ones are the funniest.
Yeah.
And they think that for some reason the police are there just to...
Well, let's make it clear. They think that maritime law supersedes any national or international law, and so they can get away with things like not having any ID, driving without a license, speeding because they're not actually driving. They're traveling. And that they have the right to walk into anywhere whenever they like because they're a citizen of the world rather than a citizen of the United States. They don't recognise their laws and all this sort of thing, and it almost always ends with them being tasered.
Pepper sprayed.
Like, I don't know. Does every sovereign citizen only ever have one encounter with the police?
Yeah, I think, and they film it and put it on YouTube as if they've won something. Yeah. Like, this guy was a complete...
It's police brutality.
Yeah. It's like, well, no. There's one I remember. We're getting a bit tangent, but this is a funny story.
Yeah.
There's like 4 guys walking down the road holding like rifles in like broad daylight, and the policeman comes over and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Basically, and they're like, "Oh, we were just exercising our rights to bear arms." And he's like, "Well, that's fine, but people are worried." Well, it's my right. Like, yeah, but you must realise, 4 young men walking down the road holding guns has connotations outside of exercising your right to bear arms. But so if John was one of these people, and he'd been like refusing to be like arrested, and been, just refused to cooperate with the police, he could have bought himself some time.
Maybe, yeah.
If he said, "I demand due procedure. I want to see first. I want to see your license.
Yeah.
I want to see your badge. What precinct do you link to? What's your badge number?
Yeah.
All this stuff."
I mean, he wouldn't have even had to be a sovereign citizen to do that.
No,
he could have just
due diligence.
Yeah. So, Joe, I this keeps slipping your mind, but in the film, Maddie is deaf.
Right. Yeah.
And the central conceit of the film, Joe, is that when her house is under attack by the killer, her deafness is a hindrance to her because she can't hear she can't hear any potential.
It's easy to forget.
Attack. Yeah. I mean, it's part of the subtext of the film. Like
it's thinly,
it's woven through, but it's very much under the surface.
Yeah. It's there if you know where to look for it.
Yeah, and the problem is, Joe. I can't believe you forgot. The problem with that, Joe, is that seeing or hearing is never not an advantage. But you could turn deafening music on to inhibit the hearing of the murderer. Or,
I'm going to assume that she doesn't own like a Bose sound system.
There does appear to be a set of speakers on her kitchen counter, unless there's something that I'm missing. That it looks very similar to speakers, but aren't sort of kitchen utensil.
It's a really obnoxious iPhone charging station or something.
Yeah, But I she might not have a massive hi-fi setup.
Yeah,
but the noise could distract him. A lot of these speakers, they're Bluetooth, so they're wireless. Some of them run on batteries, or charge and then run on batteries, so when the power gets cut they could still potentially go on.
So you're going for more of like disguise where you are, because he'll be,
or potentially make enough noise that it attracts the attention of anyone who might be in the area.
And they'll go, "For God's sake." Either they'll go, "God, I'm really peeved off, I'm going to tell him to turn it down," or they'd say, "Sounds like a jumping party over there, let's go over."
Yeah, exactly. It might, or they might phone the police. Go, "There's a party going on. Can you go shut it down?"
What sort of music would you play, Chris?
Maybe something really obnoxious and loud, like hardcore punk or something.
A bit
like
of Napalm Death.
Yeah.
You're a Napalm Death fan, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
Let me show you my Napalm Death tattoos.
Oh yeah. Very good, very good. I do have one final How to Survive, and this isn't something that necessarily. Well, maybe it would. I mean, we said there's a siege situation, perhaps, and if it came to that, you're going to need food. So why, Chris, is she spooning bowlfuls of perfectly workable food into the bin?
Yeah.
I understand the meat was burned.
Yeah.
But
the rice, the vegetables,
rice, absolutely fine.
Yeah.
She could have kept that and eaten it, but she's just chucking it in the bin. Bad for the environment as well.
Yeah.
Wasting food. What a selfish thing to do.
Yeah.
And you could have made a stew out of it. You could have made a lasagna broth of some kind, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, how to survive, learn to cook properly. Because, if you're that bad at cooking, preparing food, it's only a matter of time until you poison yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
And then
I learned out in the woods. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Food preparation skills.
Food for thought.
Yes. So, next week, Chris, we are turning to Trapped in a Small Space season.
Yeah.
The first film is Green Room.
Yes.
It's a really fairly new film. Well, I say fairly, very new.
Yeah, it came out this year.
Yeah. A story of a rock band who witness a murder take place in the green room of a venue, and it all goes downhill from there.
Yes.
And after that, the week after that, is Panic Room, Jodie Foster movie.
Yep.
Which, has a mum and her daughter trapped in a panic room.
So Trapped in Small Spaces season coming up on the How to Survive podcast.
If you've got any thoughts on how to survive in either of those, do get in touch at HowToSurviveShow@gmail.com. You can leave us a review by heading over to the podcast app on your iPhone, or Acasts, or iTunes, or Pocket Casts, or Overcast, whatever the podcasting pod consumption app you use is. We love the reviews. We love reading them. So 5 stars is the magic number.
And furthermore, you can find us on Twitter at HowToSurvivePod.
Yeah, do at us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a quick reminder that episode 50, which is fast approaching, will be our inaugural How to Survive Hall of Fame episode, where we look over the previous 49 films that we've covered and pick one survivor to be forever venerated in the Hall of Fame.
Forever venerated. Quite a mouthful.
Yes. And Maddie, maybe Maddie from this film is making a late charge for a position.
She did have assistance, though, from John.
He didn't do that much.
Yeah, true. He died.
Yeah.
Bled on him.
Yeah. I don't think anyone came out of that film and went, thank God John turned up. Yeah.
Thank God,
If
John found it when he did.
So, if you've got any suggestions on your favourite survivor from the last 49 films, or what will be the last 49 films when we get to episode 50, then let us know through all the usual pathways.
We've actually had one email in from a listener, which I thought I'd like to share these. He's harking back to Aliens. He's obviously just catching up. He says, "Hiya, big fan of the show. I know this is from a few podcasts back, but I wanted to mention something about Aliens. You very hastily passed the character Private Hudson, played by the great Bill Paxton. You remember his, we're all going to die!
Yeah, the one who loses it, basically.
Yeah. You probably already know this, but if you don't, I will award myself 100 internet points. But he, the actor, has been killed by an alien, a predator, and the Terminator. Did you know that? I
didn't, so award yourself 100 internet points.
Yeah, well, 200, because none of us knew it.
Yeah.
So well done.
Or is it 50 each? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not familiar with internet points.
No. You have to talk to the Internet Points Committee about that. Check the book. He goes on. Lance Henriksen arguably can claim a similar achievement, but he was killed by a predator in Alien vs. Predator, which, although was probably the best of that series, Alien vs. Predator, I'm guessing not Alien and Predator, was still dog shit.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Correct.
Love the podcast, and he's got some suggestions for films. He's got Kill List, Predator, The Thing, An American Werewolf in London, could be quite good. Brain Dead, which is the Peter Jackson horror comedy from many years ago, and 28 Weeks Later.
Sure.
A Kill List, I think we've got coming up, actually.
At some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that we have a big list of films in which you can await them.
That'll be Paranormal Hitman season. He signs off Dog Bowl, so thank you, Dog Bowl.
Cheers.
And we look forward to hearing from you and any other listeners again soon. And that email address again, howtosurviveshow@gmail.com. So Chris, we can stop anytime we want, and we can turn off the podcast anytime we want, but we're not going to. Not until it's time. When we wish we're dead, that's when we can turn it off. Do you wish you were dead?
Yeah.
Turn it off. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
I thought you were going to go with, and to close, let's have a quote from Maddie.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And then just 10 seconds of silence.
Rude boy, hush. Don't ask me why I'm in a rush. Don't ask me why I'm not tweeting. I'm in Brett Cross, man, I'm shopping in Lush. If you know me, phone me. I'ma go eat on my lonelies. I'm in Nando's with a veggie wrap, or I'm sitting in Leon, munching a Go Beat.